Hello, and welcome to the Ascendant Art Podcast, where we are on a search for art that is ascending above the mainstream. This is Mike with Catalytic Comics, here with Joey from Keeper's Cairn, and tonight's guest we have is Miss Rena from Magic Gal Media. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So, Miss Rena, I know you reached out to me with a comic project that you've got, and it did seem like some very interesting artwork there. And I know I was starting to get caught up with you a little bit about the story. So, tell me about this. So, it's called Black Rhapsody on Indiegogo. So, yeah, tell us about it.
Yes, Black Rhapsody is a 35-page plus horror cult manga-esque horror cult thriller about musical magical girls named after mythological goddesses in an uphill fight against a Lovecraftian pop star of an evil music empire. Said Lovecraftian pop star is based on none other than Beyonce Knowles. So it's Lovecraftian Beyonce versus magical girls in bloody good fun.
I was going to say, and now you say bloody good fun. It seems like we had some pretty wild monster designs here. And of course, also for the characters. So here we've got our monsters, and then here we've got our main character here. So tell us a little bit about this lady here.
The girl in black on the left is Aldi Mahalia, and the girl on the right with the wings is her magical girl persona Hecate. As you could probably already tell, she's based off the Greek goddess of necromancy, witchcraft, magic, and the moon. Alethea is a young girl who I could best describe as. Are you familiar with the series Nier?
As in like Nier Automata, the game?
Yes, but also
But it's
Replicant.
Also Replicant? Okay.
Yes. There's a character by the name of Kaine. Are you familiar with Kaine?
I was going to say, now this part I'm starting to like get out my area of familiarity, so I've heard of the series. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the background and like how it ties in here.
There is a dark fantasy video game series. Basically, it's about a young boy trying to save his sister. One of the characters in Nier is a woman by the name of Kaine. Kaine is a feminine-looking, foul-mouthed chick that is willing to resort to violence at a moment's notice. Alethea, the girl in black that you showed earlier, her personality is based off of Kaine, as well as Ryoko Montoya from Kill la Kill. So you got a foul-mouthed goth teen with an attitude. Her mouth eventually gets her in trouble. Is the reason why things happen in the story to her.
Yes, Vinny from Little Ched, he has made it. Good evening, Vinny.
Hello.
I'll catch you up real quick on what we're talking about here. So we have Black Rhapsody. So we've got musical-themed magical girls based on various mythological figures. And, of course, we're talking about the main character right now. And, of course, yeah, any good character design, any good story always needs someone to have some flaws and also to get themselves into trouble with those flaws. So it sounds like that's what it is. Like, she goes out, she says things, she starts trouble, and then now trouble's visiting her.
Yeah, and now she has to fight for her life.
And I know you mentioned a couple of other series. So yeah, what was some of the inspiration behind this story? So kind of like why this story?
I really like dark fantasy stories, but I also like dark fantasy stories centered around female characters. I took a lot for Black Rhapsody. I took a lot of inspiration from Mythological Magica and Berserk, as well as Gem and the Holograms with the whole music theme. And
You
the reason
totally
why I
got me
chose these
with
dark.
Gem and the Holograms meets Berserk. I know that we usually don't talk about not pitching things that way, but just those two things together, I'm already in 100%.
Yeah.
All right, dude. So when we get to the Indiegogo campaign later, we're definitely going to get you signed up, Vinny.
Yeah, I really love like dark fantasy stories, so I took a lot of inspiration from some of my favorites.
All right. And then also, too, you mentioned, so part of it is that you're starting to construct the different characters, and they're based on different mythological figures. So, like, what types of mythology are going to, like, factor into this?
All types of mythology: Greek, African, Japanese, Chinese, Cthulhu mythos.
Okay, this is really going to be interesting, because I'm wondering which Chinese mythological figures get pulled out of this, because, like, I'm a little bit familiar with that space.
Well, I can tell you that for the Japanese mythological figure, she's based off the Shinto ice god the Shinto ice god, dragon god, and she's based off the music melodic death metal.
And so I guess like each one kind of has so for musical themes, it starts off with one, and I guess somehow friendships form, and we kind of take it from there.
Yes.
Do they all go to the same school?
No.
It's a little bit of a moving away from the standard anime magical girl storyline, but I'm okay with that. Changing up the genre a little bit.
Yeah, the genre has become pretty formulaic, so this sounds like it's bucking the formula at the very least.
And I was going to say, that makes me ask, is that one of the motivations for putting this together? It's like, we've already seen like all the happy, colorful, like Precure kind of series. It's like, no, let's do death metal. Like, what was kind of the inspiration there?
I wanted to give the characters their own individuality. If you see from a lot of Magical Girls series, a lot of them tend to have like very samey styles. As you mentioned, Precure. So for each of the girls, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to give them different genres and see how those embodiments of the genres interact with each other. How would someone that's based off of death metal interact with someone that's based off of Afro soul? How would someone that's based off of Latin religious music interact with someone based off ethereal wave?
As I can see, I guess a few different kind of conflicts there. One is maybe they just do not like each other's style, but then also two, ideological or behavior or other type of basis, like they're just going to be very different. So in that case, what is their reason for wanting to stay together then? Just common enemy, or?
Yes, as well as other things that are kind of spoiler heavy.
I was going to say, yeah, there can always be a lot of lore tied up in these. And you also mentioned you're the writer for the story, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell us about the writing experience. Like, did you go it all alone? Did you do it with an editor? And what were just some of the things you learned in the writing process?
I when I first did my script, I did it with it. Well, first it was without an editor. Then I had to get an editor later on. One of the biggest things I had to learn was character voice, because my original draft, when my editor read it, she couldn't distinguish the character's personality. There was no distinctness to them.
It's kind of like they were all the same person talking.
Yeah, because I did struggle with that originally. But as the character started to formulate and finalize in my head, I was able to give them a distinct voice.
Yeah, and what were some of the things that you kind of did to make that happen?
I took inspirations of character voice from the media I like. As I said before with Alethea, given how she acts in the story, it reminds me of how Kaine would act. Someone who is just very brash and in your face and just doesn't take shit from anyone.
And I'm trying to think, to balance against that kind of character who's like super in your face, like, did you end up saying like, okay, like someone else has got to be the, I know in TV tropes they call it the chick, but it's the one that's like a lot more kind and like kind of ties the group together that way.
Yes, I have a character that's kind of like more soft and reserved and motherly, but also tends to be a bit of a wet. I would say a wet blanket. If you've seen anime, you always have this character that wants to resolve things peacefully, but doesn't seem to understand that talking things out is always the option. And this character kind of dilutes themselves into believing that things can be resolved peacefully. Like you see this in a lot of like shoujo genre.
And speaking of that, so as you're like out there looking for inspiration, it sounds like you've definitely have like gotten into just like different lines of manga. What's some other stuff that you looked into for kind of inspiration for this? We got the music, we've got the manga. Anything else?
Some video games and anime. As I mentioned, Kill la Kill was another inspiration, because I was mainly looking for ways of how to write a female character or different female characters with different personalities.
What you've got with the normal kind of magical girl setup, there's, the genre is pretty established. And like you were talking about, there's characters that kind of lean into specific types of behavior. Usually there's the angry fighting one, there's the peace happy one that never just wants to believe in peace, love, and harmony. And I can see why when you're mixing that in with kind of what you were talking about, that may not be as good. Did you have any other like standard kind of trope character types that you decided to work with?
Yeah, I had the Ojo-sama, like the rich girl, like the peppy and arrogant rich girl, who I based off of Hera from Greek mythology. If you know anything about Hera, she's not the most likable of the Greek gods.
No, especially what she did to Hercules, man. That was.
I mean, let's be honest. Most of the Greek gods aren't very likable when you.
Well, it's
start
just the
to dig into their
Olympians
history.
that aren't very likable. The chthonic gods are a bit of a different story.
A different story, how? Because I've got to read more Lovecraft, because like we keep like running into people who are fans of this genre.
Like you don't see Hades cheating on Persephone the way Zeus cheats on Hera.
And with pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Bunny Gal.
Oh, hello.
And I was going to mention too, if for everybody in the audience, feel free at any time to ask questions because we do like taking those and just see how it goes. In fact, what is this in reference to, Spooky Pretzels?
Troll 2 was the Troll World Tour. That's where they have to mix in and get all the different musical genres. I have a 7-year-old, so I see kids' movies more often than most.
Oh, I never saw Trolls 2 because I didn't like the first one. It was basically just popular music covers the movie.
Oh yeah, they were shit movies. I just came up with an interesting question though. There's music involved in this. How does the music correlate to their power sets?
With Hecate, her power correlates with the dead, so she can draw the dead to her. She's kind of a necromancer type magical girl, but without the whole morally evil aspect. She fights for the dead, specifically victims of unjust crimes such as murder, rape, or any unjust crime you can think of. If she's in front of the perpetrator of said crime, she can summon the dead to her and let the victim mete out their justice. She can also draw like help from them, but it has to be voluntary from the dead. If she tries to take it by force, like an actual necromancer does, they will turn against her.
Okay, so she can ask the dead for help, but she can't make them help.
Yeah, she has to build up a repertoire with them, and that usually consists of her helping them find peace by basically singing her songs, but she can channel their emotions through her songs to a family member, telling them their last wish or reunite them momentarily through her song.
As long as she doesn't fly off the handle, given her character.
Yes.
So that does sound pretty interesting. So we've got kind of a growth arc in there. I noticed, like, looking through the feed that there's not a whole lot of art of the other characters. Are they going to be coming in later issues? And so, like, we kind of start with the first girl, and then we're going to see other ones in later issues. Is how it's going to be set up?
Yeah.
And let's see. Bunny Gal's got her first question for us. So, Mike, Chad, and Slender, what is your favorite kind of anime?
It'd be really weird if I said magical girls right now, wouldn't it? But I mean, I'm not going to lie. Given my age demographic, I've seen some Sailor Moon in my life. So
The Sailor
a
Moon
fan
is
of
what
Sailor
taught
Moon.
me how to draw girls. So
That's
I
right.
mean, what was the line? The girls in Sailor Moon's got the boom anime girls that make me think the wrong thing was. Like, and this is interesting because me and Joey Slenderdad over there have started kind of a side recording of the podcast talking about anime. I'm a big fan of isekai, which is the transported to another world genre of anime. And
I never found isekai interesting.
see, it's a really big genre with a lot of nuance to it. I like you've
no, I
got
like this. I like this. Miss Rena, let's get him. This guy sucks. You suck for liking it.
because Joey over there is a fan of slice of life, which
Love it.
now which he's been pushing me into watching. But I like isekai that has like there's a lot of generic isekai, but I like the ones like my favorite one would be ReZero. Me and Joey have talked about this.
I
love
heard good things about that.
Yeah, and I like Konosuba because it's a humorous like send up of the
That
isekai
too.
genre, and Mushoku Tensei might be kind of sliding in there for my new favorite. Yeah, the isekai is the truck kun, as someone in chat is talking about the hit by a truck genre.
I actually do like Shield Hero. If I had to say a favorite isekai, Shield Hero would probably be it.
I'm going to be honest, thanks to Joey over there, I started watching a slice of life / sort of reverse isekai, which was The Devil is a Part-Timer, just recently, and I really enjoyed it. Yes, so I really enjoyed that one. I can be honest, I've been watching so much anime in the last 6-7 months just compared to my what I used to watch and other stuff. I find anime is just more entertaining, and there's so much variety within the genres, and it's really just interested in good storytelling, and it doesn't have agendas, and it's just kind of
it's
fun.
one of the few places you can still go for an escape. All the stuff coming out of Hollywood these days, it's all, hey, we've got messages for you, we've got political leanings to foist upon you, and it's like, I don't want your politics in my movies, I don't want your politics in my shows. I just want a good story. And anime can still give me that. because I've noticed the same thing. In the last 6 months, I've watched a lot more anime than I used to.
And you're the two guys introducing me to it, so the only one I've really taken up is the was that the how heavy are the dumbbells you lift, so that slice of life one. Because by the way, my wife is now a competitive athlete. She's actually won some competitions here locally. And so we have fun watching that one together, and she like critiques what the show is teaching. So
One of my favorite aspects of anime is that when I don't know if it's probably just a cultural thing, when they're trying to introduce you to something, no matter what the anime genre is, they'll spend a couple minutes like explaining in detail like what they're doing. And I think this is interesting because having you on as a guest, you're clearly kind of taking inspiration from anime with what you're doing. And I think a lot of creators that are finding success in the, especially the indie world, have started kind of leaning into some of the anime stylings. And I think there's a reason for that because there's a good crossover in people who just want to be entertained and have fun with their storytelling who like anime. So it kind of makes sense that independent creators might be kind of going that route. Did you consciously, when you were kind of coming up with your stuff, decide you wanted to do that? Or was this just something because you liked it personally?
It was my plan from the get-go to have like a story with manga art because I grew up reading manga before I got into American comics.
And I was going to say, this is kind of an interesting, you might call it like cultural turning point or such, because there was always this assumption that Western media is dominant in the West and that it's only a small fandom that would go to anime or go to manga. But like, I actually feel like we're starting to see a change in that. Like, I talk to people who know comics now, I'm more likely to hear people mention a manga title than like a Western comics title. So it's kind of like Western media is actually losing out on what would geographically be its own home ground.
Numbers say that at this point, actually.
Yeah.
The Korean show that was popular in the West, or at least in America
Squid
last
Games?
year was
Yeah.
Squid Game.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is interesting is a lot of people are like, oh, comics, anime, these things have always had politics or messages in their stuff. And what I've kind of thought about is that they had perspective, they didn't have agenda. I think it's really good to have a perspective with your storyteller. What really ended up tripping a lot of people up is when they kind of serve an agenda instead of a perspective. And so like something like Squid Games, where it actually had a pretty specific perspective about, the culture and capitalism and, the excess of greed and all those things is perfectly fine, because it's not just beating you over the head with agenda versus, perspective. Just my 2 cents on that one. But I did like Squid Games. It was good. And what's funny is a lot of anime is made in Korea too. Most anime is actually drawn in Korea nowadays.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, a lot of the animation studios kind of farm out because there's only so much in Japan to do, so they actually get a lot of people in Korea doing it, and a lot of the other countries have started getting in on it too. There, it used to be a thing where like, oh, you can only make anime in Japan. Like even the Japanese studios aren't having animators exclusively work in Japan, and they haven't for a long time. So anime is more a stylistic choice than it is necessarily a national thing. So I do think that, sometimes the question is like, is something anime or not? Like I think Castlevania is a good example. On Netflix, it was definitely a distinctive anime style production, but it was a Western studio. So there was a big debate should it count as anime or not? I would think that for my part, I think that it should definitely count as an anime, even though it was a Western produced one.
I agree, especially since, the source material there is Castlevania, which is an old Nintendo game. It clearly started in Japan.
Konami, to be specific, I think. Speaking of that, did you have any, in addition to kind of like the anime inspiration, what other stuff did you like watching as a kid that kind of gave you some, storytelling thoughts?
As a kid, I used to watch the usual like stuff like Inuyasha, Dragon Ball, Naruto, the stuff that everyone will watch. I started to veer off from the regular, like more mainstream anime into other stuff when I started, using certain websites or streaming services.
You didn't ride the high seas there. Is that what you're trying to say that maybe you were doing?
No.
What are you talking about? That Russian site is totally legit and has lots of anime. So
I was going to say, you just got to download a codec to make it work, right?
Not even that anymore. But
You just got to get a lot of weird ads. And
So when you, in terms of, we've talked a little bit about the storytelling, but in terms the nuts and bolts of actually making your product, like how's that gone for you? Tell us about that experience.
The process for finding an artist wasn't easy because before finding Jan, my current artist, I had another artist by the name of Edwin. But let's say things didn't work out and I had to find a new artist, which led me to finding Jan on ArtStation, my current artist on the book.
Oh, so you used ArtStation for your search process?
Yeah, ArtStation, Twitter, Facebook, surprisingly.
I know Twitter I've had pretty good success finding artists, and I've heard ArtStation, but yeah, I have not known of people doing it on Facebook for sure.
Well, you're likely to find like Southeast Asian artists who do have like cheap pay rates from what I've gathered, but they have very excellent and very detailed manga art.
Yeah, and speaking of that, so as far as like the book's production process, I see you've got the Indiegogo page out there. So are you at the point of getting it printed? Is the art done? Like kind of where are you in that process right now?
My artist Jan has done 50% of the book so far, and we
Okay.
plan to have her do the second half, the second 100% once the book funds.
Yeah, and in fact, about that, I guess I can go ahead and also just bring up the page for that again. I'm gonna put it into the YouTube chat and also show it here. Tell us a bit more about, I guess, just on the page itself here. So I see it mentions about trading cards. So like, what all? So when this thing drops, like, what all are you going to be offering on the page?
Offering like a do kind of offer a PDF and well as like a physical print of the book because I know that shipping in other countries is kind of hectic at the moment, and I feel kind of guilty making people pay for a book that might have like costly shipping. So I give them the option of a digital PDF if they so wish. I also plan to offer a virgin poster of the cover art with Hecate and Alethea, as well as some safe for work and not safe for work pinups of one of the adult female characters.
Okay, so yeah, kind of full offering there. And yeah, when you mention international shipping, because I know like I handle both American and European shipments for one book myself. You're right, like that can really get you the European shipping.
Yeah.
So about Vinny, Joey, any questions from you guys?
How have you been going about kind of trying to build your audience and make people aware of it aside from coming on shows like ours? Is there other things, newsletters, mailing lists? Like what's been your, process for building awareness?
Mainly posting on Twitter, specifically on certain tags such as Self Promo Saturday is a good tag to accumulate a lot of signups, as well as Work in Progress Wednesday tags, as well as tabletop RPG tags. I've noticed that help a lot.
That's interesting. Like, so I would not have even thought about the like gaming space kind of thing. So do people just, I guess, do you see a lot of crossover with that, or is it just something that's worked out for you? How's that, have you gotten any feedback on why that's been so successful?
I think it's because of my art and my pitch is why it's so successful. Because as you probably heard earlier, Magical Girls versus Lovecrafting Beyonce. That's in the tone and theme of Mythological Magica meets Preserve. That immediately catches eyes. And you combine that with the art, you're going to get some eyes on it.
No, absolutely. I have to say the artwork, especially the character design, is very engaging. Just looking at it.
I also have done some art share posts, which also really helped.
Now I'm looking and I see a lot of these black and white images. Is it going to stay as a black and white when it gets released, or is there going to be color?
Color is a stretch goal on that campaign, so it is going to stay black and white until I reach the color stretch goal. Once that happens, then I'll have Jam do it in color.
So color is a stretch goal. Very good. I guess one other question there. Have you performed any campaigns before?
No, this is my first campaign and my first project.
All right, cool. And yeah, we're definitely looking forward to see how this works out then.
And just what you've done so far, are there any lessons you feel like you've learned that you think, if going back, I wish I'd done this different before I started? Like,
I wish I reached out to people who are more experienced than me when it comes to setting up campaigns earlier, because my original draft wasn't very well thought out. So, but since then, I have kind of spoken to a few other comic creators who are more experienced than me in running campaigns, and they have helped me improve on the draft.
Yep. And I was going to say, and speaking of that for some of the campaign, I know one question you also asked for every creator as well is when you were setting up the story as well, was there any like major change or like one thing that you said like, man, I got to do this differently to like really make this story pop?
Tackling the main character's powers, also trying to make Alethea likable. Because in the original draft, she was kind of an unlikable asshole, I'm going to admit, because I leaned way too hard into the whole what was
I
that
was going
character
to say,
trope?
based on your description, I was wondering if that wasn't a struggle or not.
No, absolutely. And I'm just now I'm thinking of like first drafts of some of my characters that like I keep saying like, hey, like I'm gonna do this with like comedic elements, and then someone's like, Mike, where are the comedic elements, dude? Like this is either serious or this guy here is being a jerk. You gotta work on this.
Yeah, that's the problem, is finding that balance.
No, so so it sounds like, so I guess like the humility moments and like not being a victim were it, and then you just kind of, I guess, played up some of that, and now it sounds like it's a story we got to check out.
Yeah, and all thanks to my editor who put me in the right direction, and as well as writing from other shows, other good shows that tackle very similar attributes to my character and how they are able to do it and pull it off. Really to help.
No, absolutely, and I'm thinking too that there's one thing you kind of mentioned in passing, but like I had the same thing happen with me too before I sent my story to the editor. Is we also forget too that the artist often has a lot of good feedback as well, because the artist is the very first person who reads your story, but also because they talk to you, they know what you're trying to do, and based on what you're trying to do, if they come forward to us like, hey man, like you're failing to meet on this part right here, that can be really valuable early on.
I haven't gotten much feedback from my artists concerning the script.
Is that something that you would have liked from the artist? Like, what's your process? Is that something where you don't want feedback? Like, what's your process like for that?
I don't mind feedback from the artists if it's something that I need to correct or make clear.
Now, in terms of your script writing, do you do a like traditional comic book script, or do you have your own format that you came up with?
I think writing a traditional comic book, because I know some writers do, like they're writing for like a screenplay. I don't do that because I want to be as clear as possible to whatever artist that I have.
Because it's very, because each of us is working kind of our own, aside from Joey Slenderdad over there, he's doing a regular book, but, I do comic strip, Mike's doing his own comic book, and so we all kind of developed our own process around doing that. So it's something we like to figure out is how you like to do yours, because I know Mike came up with a very visual style for how he was piecing together his script, which was awesome. Mine is more of a traditional script style format when I write it out, so I always like to kind of figure out what where your process came from for that.
Maybe during the free play, I can show what that one looks like. But yeah, like I've heard that there is no standard format for a comic script. Like everyone does it a little bit differently.
I looked at both Marvel, DC, as well as Image Comics, and they all did different.
Yeah, because some of them will be like, one page equals one comic book page, and like they'll do it on a Word doc. Some of them will say, well, like try to set up the panels a little bit. And then other ones will say, and I know especially with Marvel, they're just like, okay, we don't even care what the words are going to be. Just generally, this is what's going to be happening on the page, and we'll figure out the script later.
Yeah, I know that someone told me a story about how Chris. Are you familiar with a comic writer, Chris Claremont? I'm sorry, I probably misremember. I think it was Jack Kirby. Someone had told me that Jack Kirby had used to write like one-page scripts or scripts with very little detail on it, and just left it to the the artist to figure it out. I don't know how true that is.
So that was the story for how Stanley sort of allegedly
Stan Lee
gave Jack Kirby, who was his art partner for a lot of projects. And it's one of the arguments on why Jack Kirby should get a lot of credit for Marvel's success, because Stan Lee would give these vague, just basic outline kind of things, and Kirby would make the Fantastic Four out of it, things like that. Galactus and Silver Surfer.
That's what I meant to say. Sorry, I kind of misremembered the story.
Oh no, I mean it makes sense because Kirby is a name that the fact that you first thing you said was Jack Kirby is good. It's good. That's a good sign for comic books. He should be remembered a lot more. The man could produce. He is responsible for more of what we think in terms of Marvel comics than probably Stan Lee, because Steve Ditko is one of the guys who's the one who co-created Spider-Man, and so he came up with a lot of the design for it. So Stan Lee gets all the credit for that part, but Ditko was kind of the guy who really made the look of Spider-Man, which is what made him iconic. So the artists, are definitely worth that. But yeah, that was the standard way of doing it. Like the writers would just kind of boo, like, Fantastic Four. It's an older man, a younger blonde woman, her younger brother, and a World War II pilot go into space, get powers. Here you go, Jack Kirby. Make something with that. Yeah, it's like so. Yeah, he didn't really spend a lot of time giving visual references or cues. Like I know that we do when we're working with people in 2022. Probably when you're working with your artist, when you're talking about what you'd like to do, you've probably sent along like reference images, like this is what I'm thinking. When I'm talking about this thing, and that definitely didn't happen back then.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, just the technical capacity to do that as well. That because I'm thinking even for some of the simpler stuff I've passed over to my artist, I'm just thinking like, okay, like we're just gonna go to the library, we're just gonna like search photo books for days to like find reference images. Right, if this is like back during like Stanley and Jack Kirby's time, and like we're gonna photocopy those, and then like like that would be a nightmare.
The poor trees, those poor trees.
I was going to say, now, growing up, my mother worked in a print shop. And so I was growing up, I was born 1985. So I was like right on the edge of when computer graphics came out. So I remember when copy and paste was still copying and paste, or not, no, cut and pasting photo negatives onto these boards. And like that was how you did newspaper articles. That was how you did graphic design, was like you actually like had to like do all this stuff in a photo room.
I'm really glad we don't have to do that anymore at all.
Yeah, thank God for the internet.
That's right. And Google image search.
Yes, Google image search is king.
Again, I will bring up the Indiegogo link one more time, guys. You can get it there in the chat. Is there any other way that people can follow you, Miss Rena?
Oh, yes. You can follow me on at Magic Owl Media, or you can email me at magicowlmedia@gmail.com if you would directly contact me about concerning the project.
Okay, yep. So we got Magic Owl Media here on Twitter, and as well, once again, the Indiegogo campaign. So guys, do check that out, and if it sounds interesting, musical magical girls versus the Lovecraftian Beyonce, I'd say go for it. So yeah, definitely. If there's nothing else, I just want to say thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So
I'm going to sign up on the list. I really want to see what a Lovecraftian Beyonce looks like. That's my.
Well, it looks like actual Beyonce knows. If you see Beyonce, then that's Lovecraft.